Hello and welcome to Spotlight on Jackson County. We have got probably one of the most interesting shows that I have done in a long time for you today. And I hope you learned something from this because I sure did. We have with us in the studio Miss Brittney Saunders. She is a senior advocate for the Center for Inclusion, and she's here all the way from New York.
Thanks
Brittney,
for having me.
Thank you for coming down to Mississippi to do this show. And Brittney has a long list of qualifications. I'll read a few. She has a bachelor's degree with high honors from Harvard College. She has a master's degree in education from Fordham University, and she has her Juris Doctorate. She has a law degree from Harvard Law School. And you have worked with many organizations, and but right now you're working for the Center for
Social inclusion.
Mm-hmm. And what you're working on specifically is broadband access, or the lack thereof.
That's right.
In many communities in the United States. We want to welcome you here
Thank you
to
so much.
WKFK, and we want to welcome you here to Mississippi. This is a very important program, folks, and this is a very important bunch of information we're going to present to you. So we hope you can help with this problem.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me. And I think you're absolutely right. These are critically important issues. The organization I work for is the Center for Social Inclusion, and we're celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. And what our focus has been for those 10 years is making sure that all American communities have the sorts of infrastructure and opportunities they need to thrive and to be part of the 21st century economy. And one of the things that we have seen is particularly thinking about, job creation and education and health going forward, is that broadband is a particularly important infrastructure. I mean, if folks think about, all the things that they do every day, even their very cell phone,
Exactly.
That's, what would we do without those things and the opportunities that they give us? But there's actually a lot more that broadband can do once everyone has access, and that's really our concern. And so a couple years ago, we partnered with the Mississippi State Conference, NAACP, which is based up in Jackson, but works all over the state. And we did a hearing with them about the need for high-speed internet or broadband, particularly in the Delta communities, because we had done another study at that point that showed that the communities of the Delta had the highest proportion of people of color living there, but also some of the lowest numbers in terms of average broadband providers. And we also saw some really startling connections between the number of broadband providers in the community and the number of businesses in the community. So a strong connection between broadband and economic development. So for example, in communities that averaged 1 to 3 broadband providers, there were something like 55 businesses on average. But in places where there were 4 to 7 providers, we saw almost 400 businesses on average. And so this got us thinking, this is clearly an important issue, critically important for the people of the Delta, but also really important for the state as a whole. Because in order for Mississippi to meet some of its economic development goals, its educational goals, its health goals, that connection to high-speed internet is really absolutely critical.
That's astounding. I was unaware that there was that big a connection between broadband access and businesses, but I can understand why it would be, because without broadband access, this TV station would be in a world of hurt because we rely on that heavily for everything we do. So broadband access is a very important part of job creation and bringing the economic engine to these areas. But we can't hope to increase our education level of our students in these areas in particular. And I know for a fact, because some of those schools in the Delta have textbooks that are over 20 years old. That is a travesty for those people who live there. So if we could leapfrog them forward using internet, that would be a fantastic thing to do.
That's absolutely true. I mean, there are a lot of really exciting technologies like fiber that can really connect people to the internet at high speeds. And if we can make sure that those technologies are available both in schools and in the homes of students, then we can make all sorts of new things possible. And think about what could happen if teachers had better access to new teaching tools, if students were able to do more and better research at home, if parents were able to connect with teachers and get more and more regular information about how students are doing on a regular basis. There are all sorts of really positive things that could come out of having more broadband access for a lot of the communities that currently don't have it.
Another thing that I found out in preparing for this show, folks, is we're like 60th in the world. We are surpassed by countries like South Korea, Norway, Belgium in the percentage of homes that have broadband access. America invented the internet, and we are behind.
It's true.
All of these smaller countries are surpassing us, and maybe that's why they're surpassing us in a lot of other ways, economically and educationally.
I think that's right. I mean, it took really smart, forward-thinking investment. If someone had said, I think 40, 50 years ago, we're going to invest a lot of money and, you won't see the results right now, but in 20, 30 years, you're going to be able to do almost all of your business and reach out to family and do all these things on a system that you can't even see, A lot of folks would have said, oh, I can't believe that. That seems impossible. There's no way. But when you make those sorts of smart investments over time, you get things like the internet that can completely change people's lives and can make the country more productive and allow it to do better economically. But I think the challenge that we're seeing now is that there are many Americans who have access to high-speed internet, but there are 100 million Americans who currently have no access. And what's going to determine whether or not we are able to move ahead as a country and to start being on the same kind of level as a lot of places like Norway and South Korea that you were saying have really had high levels of penetration is whether we're really committed to closing some of the gaps. So there are trends that we've seen, and this is not just in Mississippi, this is all across the country, that low-income communities tend to have less access to broadband, communities of color tend to have less access to high-speed internet. Rural communities tend to have less access. And until we start focusing on what those communities need and how we can get them what they need, I don't think we'll be able to be on par with a lot of those countries.
I was reading some of the research, and it's also senior Americans. It's people in the tribal areas, the American Indian. I mean, they have virtually no access. But another problem is affordability of that access.
Absolutely.
That has to be brought down to a level where people can afford it.
That's absolutely right.
Because it's not cheap.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap. We've seen it's incredibly critical, but it's certainly not cheap. And for instance, we did, as part of our research, we did a survey of broadband prices for different services across the state. And then we compared those numbers to the median household incomes of different groups in the state. And we found that broadband access can take as much as 1% to 6% of the median household income of an African American family in the state. And for a white family, it's about 0.5 to 3%. And so we do think that there needs to be some attention to affordability. This can be done by kind of capping prices. If you, for instance, we're recommending that the state invest in a set of demonstration projects that really target communities of color, low-income communities, and places with the lowest providers, and that for those projects they really target or cap the internet price, so we can see, what is, when internet becomes affordable to folks who currently don't have it, what are some of the benefits that come out of that? And I also think, another opportunity here are programs, federal programs like the Lifeline program and the Link Up program that will soon be available to help subsidize broadband costs. So both the costs of, connecting up your system the first time and the costs of monthly payments.
Monthly subscriber fees.
Exactly. And so, it's important that the state really leverage as much of those dollars as they can, and that they get them out to as many low-income residents as they're able to.
But you and I were talking before the show started. This is really not rocket science. I mean, is there some way a business or an industry or somebody, even if you are local here in the community, step up and sponsor one of these pilot programs? Can they contact your organization or the NAACP and say, hey, we heard about this and we want to step up. We want to buy, let's say, 350 iPads and provide a pilot program for one of the local schools, and then have your organization or NAACP or anybody come in and study, okay, how has this affected the education of these students since we've switched it over to this iPad system, this broadband access? Can we do something like that?
Sure. So I would certainly encourage folks who are interested and who have really innovative ideas like that and are really fired up and inspired to certainly think about contacting our organization or the Mississippi State Conference, NAACP, because we would love to hear about those ideas. And I would say that, I mentioned before the demonstration projects. I think the critical thing about a setup like that would be making sure that it's open enough to allow Mississippians to innovate for themselves, right? So that if, what makes sense down here, as you were saying, was for, a group of people to partner with a local business and decide, we want to, someone can provide a set of iPads and someone else is willing to donate, a certain amount of time or labor to wire a facility or something like that. Yes, we want to make sure that it's a system that's open enough to allow for that sort of creativity. Because everyone doesn't have to do it in the same way. The point is just that people get affordable, reliable, high-speed internet service that allows them to connect up to all these educational and job and health benefits.
Well, it was astounding to me, and it makes sense now though, but lack of broadband access means that businesses won't go to those communities. And it makes sense because their inventory tracking is done with internet. Their ordering is done with internet. Their email, internet. Their communication with other companies, internet. The word internet comes up in every single solitary one of those discussions. And without that, a business can't operate. Because every time you swipe that barcode in any business, it's not just in that computer where you're checking out. It's going to a central one, and they're controlling the inventory and the ordering, and then that's where your inventory and your ordering takes place. So I can understand why a business would not locate. That would probably be one of the first things they would ask the economic development coordinator in that area. How's your broadband access?
That's right. That's right. I think there's really at this point no way to kind of overestimate how important it's going to be. I mean, and that's just where we are now. Think about 10 years from now.
Well, certainly the federal government can't do it all. Certainly the state can't do it all. That's why I am challenging businesses and industries to step up to the plate with your technology people volunteering, providing the wiring or whatever, providing computers, donating iPods. Step up to the plate and help out, because that's what it's going to take. I don't think we can look to the government to do it all. Do you?
I think that there's an important role for government to play in terms of investment,
I do too.
Large-scale investment. And I certainly appreciate the steps that the FCC has taken over the last few years and is taking now to try to expand access. But I do think that there's probably a higher level of investment that could be made, because these are really, as we were saying, these are issues that need to be addressed if our country is going to be a thriving competitor on the global scale. But I do think you're right. I think there's room for a lot of creativity and a lot of different types of partnerships. And I think there is absolutely a role for private companies to play.
Well, it would only increase their business by having a better trained workforce, okay, a more informed student population. It would only be better for them. They are going to increase their productivity in their business if they have well-trained students who are coming out of these institutions that are going to go to work for them. So when that happens, their business is going to flourish, which is going to make the economy in a local area better. So it's a win-win situation all the way around, no matter how you look at it.
I think that's absolutely right. I think it's it's a sort of investment that reinforces all different sorts of other areas and allows all different types of people to benefit. So it's a matter of kind of seeing that and being forward-thinking enough to realize that an investment now that targets the communities that need them most will really have benefits for the entire state.
I do. I believe that strongly. Brittney, we're going to have to take a short commercial break, but we'll be back with more wonderful information on this program right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to this very important edition of Spotlight on Jackson County. We have as our guest in the studio Miss Brittney Saunders. She is from the Center for Inclusion from New York City. She's come all the way down here to Jackson County to do this important show. It's full of information that we hope that you use to help us make something happen. Brittney, welcome to the show. We appreciate you making a long trip down here for this.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's our pleasure for you to be here. We were talking about broadband access and
That's
the
right.
lack thereof.
That's right.
And one of the things I read in the report was business and industry said they invested $65 billion in 2010 alone to increase broadband access and to build out into different communities. But why? I mean, I don't see it happening. I mean, is this why aren't they doing more for the communities that need it? It sounds like in this report it's really rosy and they're doing everything they can. But
yeah, so one of the things that we've seen, a lot of folks will cite the amount of investment that private corporations have made in broadband, but one of the patterns that we've seen, not just here in Mississippi, but across the country, is that a lot of large telecommunications providers, the people whom, maybe many of your viewers get their broadband from, or, large companies we all know, they often, when deciding where to build out, internet access, will make that decision based on how much of a profit they think they can make. So if they invest X amount of dollars, how much do they think that they'll make back? And a lot of times that means that they'll look at a rural community, or they'll look at a predominantly people of color community or low-income community, and they'll say, well, it doesn't make sense for us to invest here because we don't think we'll earn our money back. And the problem with that is that it leaves, obviously, large chunks of our population out in the cold without access, unable to connect these crucial infrastructures and the crucial benefits that they provide. So we think that, it's one thing for corporations to be able to make their choices, but then it's incredibly important for our state leaders and our federal leaders to make a very different set of choices and to really prioritize the needs of those communities that have the least access. So by giving them access to affordable, reliable broadband, and ideally through really high-speed technologies. So in Mississippi, for instance, the most popular wireline technology, so the most popular type of wired internet is DSL.
right.
But we also know that, even the CEO of AT&T in the summer of 2011 said that DSL was obsolete, right? So why do we want to be wiring our communities with something that's we think is already moving towards, the direction of being obsolete? We should be investing in things that are going to be, be able to serve communities and help them connect to benefits, help improve educational opportunities, help improve job development and economic development for years to come. And so that's why we think there's a really important leadership role for both federal leaders and state leaders to play here.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and it makes sense. If some community doesn't have it, why are you going to give them something that's obsolete, leapfrog them forward with the new technology that you can build on for the future? Therefore, you won't have to replace it.
Exactly. You
So
make smart investments now.
You make a smart investment now, you can build
on
on it for the future, and you won't have to waste any money later trying to replace something that's outdated.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. I mean, these are, if somebody's listening to this show and they feel the need to try to help, to try to do something, you have a website.
That's right.
It's www.socialinclusion.org. They can go there, they can get more information on this report, they can find out who they need to contact. If you are a business or an industry leader or a mover or a shaker or somebody who can make something happen, if one of our congressmen happen to be watching now, if some of our representatives happen to be watching now, go to this website, find out what you can do to research this, because I've done it and it's astounding how far behind we are.
It's true.
And where we need to go to catch up with tiny countries like Norway or South Korea. It only increases the quality of life, education level, and business and industry and jobs. Everybody wants a job. Everybody needs a job. We're in a bad situation now, but like you said, business and industry won't locate to an area that has absolutely no broadband access.
That's right.
And they don't do that because of their need to connect via broadband.
It's true. It's true. It's so deeply connected to our 21st century economy, which means, as you were saying, on one side, businesses aren't going to locate to places where they know they can't get dependable access. But on the other side, it means think of all the benefits that we could reap if we were to actually invest in broadband and make sure that everyone had access. So there's, both real challenges, but once you come up with some creative solutions, which we think we've done in this report, there's some real benefits that can come about from it.
And if you want to read more about the report, it's www.centerforsocialinclusion.org. And there's a lot of information on there. There's contact information on there. There's links on there.
That's absolutely right.
Please, folks, learn more about this, because I know when you're sitting at your computer at night and you're on the internet, you're not thinking about, wow, there might be some people even in the United States that doesn't have this access.
That's right.
That don't have this privilege. Believe me, be honest with you, I never thought about that when I was sitting at my computer at work or at home. And honestly, I do not have fiber. I have DSL where I am. We have fiber here at the station, which we absolutely have to have for our business would not be possible without a very high-speed internet connection. That's because we rely on it so heavily. So this station wouldn't be here in this area if we didn't have that access. Our big industries here like Chevron, Ingalls Shipbuilding, some of the chemical companies, I'm sure wouldn't be here without a high-speed internet connection, because they rely on that so heavily for their business. And they are the job providers.
That's right.
They are the people that are driving the economic engine of our area.
That's right.
So the only way for places like the Delta to improve the quality of life of its residents, which would be getting more business and industry to locate there, broadband access, high-speed internet.
Really at the heart of the issue.
It just seems so simple to me that okay, you want that to happen? You build this in. And like I said, Brittney, I don't know if the federal government can do it all. I don't know if the state government can do it all. So that's why I'm really pushing individuals, businesses, congressmen, senators, representatives to step up, come together on this issue and try to find a way.
That's right.
Even if we don't do but some small pilot programs right now, and get anybody we can, Cisco, Microsoft, anybody we can involved in this, and make a study to see, okay, here's how the quality of life is going to improve. Here's how businesses will locate to your community, creating jobs, increasing the quality of life, making a better education system for our children, because they're our future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you talked a little bit about some of the solutions, and I'll just kind of list them out for folks so they can have a little preview before they hopefully go to the website and look at the report. But, there are basically three things that we're suggesting. One is that the state invest in a set of demonstration projects, and these would be projects that would target the communities that currently have the least access. So predominantly communities of color, low-income communities, and places where there are the fewest providers. And really in those places, make room for different sorts of models of broadband deployment, different sorts of partnerships, all with the ultimate goal of making sure that those communities get affordable, reliable access. The other option that we are looking at, so option number 2, is one of the things that's happening this year as a result of efforts by the FCC is that federal dollars are going to become available to allow for broadband expansion. And we really think that in trying to draw down these dollars, Mississippi, again, needs to make sure that it's allowing innovation. It needs to not just make sure that those dollars go to, you know, the large telecommunications providers, but make sure that other folks also get access to those dollars, particularly folks who are really committed, as you were saying, to investing in their communities and to making sure that those communities are thriving. And then finally, you know, to your point about study and proof, right? We think it's absolutely important that the state pay close attention to where broadband dollars are going, what they're building out, you know, what communities are now benefiting, what sorts of technology are they getting? Are they getting DSL, or are they getting something that's going to leapfrog, as you said, move them forward? You know, who is getting access? Are communities of color benefiting from these investments, or are they not benefiting? And also, is it reliable, and how much does it cost? So we think that there's a really, really important role for state leaders to play in tracking how these investments are made. In 2010, something like $30 million went to telecommunications enterprises in the form of tax incentives or benefits, and that's here in Mississippi, so that's at the state level alone. And we think that, you know, with those sorts of benefits should come, you know, responsibilities to the communities that you're based in and to the state as a whole.
Well, yeah, and I know that one phone call from a business or industry leader to his local representative to his congressman could jumpstart all of this.
It's true.
Maybe they're not aware of everything that's going on. Maybe they're not aware of the total problem. Try the website. If you're watching, any of our congressmen or our representatives, find out this information. Contact the governor, contact your congressman, contact your senator in Washington, D.C. But we got to jumpstart this. We've got to put the battery cables on it and make it go. So increased awareness is the key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Find out what you need to do.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, over the course of the last year, the state of Mississippi has, you know, taken some steps towards raising awareness and really, you know, learning more about these issues. But we're at a point where it's, you know, it's a time for, you know, where are we going to go from there? And we hope that our solutions help suggest some steps that can be taken to really make sure that we have a real impact on this problem.
It's time to start pulling wires and breaking out the pliers and making things happen.
That's right.
Well, Brittney, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show, but I want to thank you for making the long trip down here to Jackson County from New York.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure for me to have you on the show, and you have really enlightened and enriched my knowledge of this, and hopefully this show has done the same for our viewers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure to meet you and a great pleasure to see you.
Same here.
And it was a great pleasure to be with you on this edition of Spotlight on Jackson County. Join us again next time for another informative show. We'll see you then.